So hi everyone, welcome to Entering the GreenTech Era. My name is Jessica Farrow. I am head of content at Holston Group, who are the creators behind this particular white paper. I am joined by Carl Farrow, no relation to myself, just a good coincidence, who is CEO of Seraphy Energy. Don Scott, who is CCO at Powerroll, and James Whitehead, CCO at Solar Water PLC, who will be our panelists for today. We will be going through, we've recently created a white paper called Entering the GreenTech Era, which delved into all of the latest innovation and technology that's helping to progress the kind of climate agenda and climate change prevention. We talked around kind of investment, collaboration, and accessibility. So we're going to delve into a few topics that kind of emerge when creating the piece and get some new insight, because it was a little while back now that we actually created that white paper, see if anything's changed within the industry and try to gain some new insight into new areas. So we're going to go through investment, adoption, collaboration within the industry, accessibility to green technologies. But to begin with, I thought we'd start getting some introductions from our panelists, who will present a little bit about themselves and their companies and what they are doing to help prevent climate change or address climate-related emergencies. So to begin with, I'll start with James Whitehead, if you'd like to begin.
Thank you very much. Can everybody see that? I hope. Hello, everyone. My name is James Whitehead. I'm the CCO of Solar Water PLC. We are a green tech company that is looking to sustainably solve the global water crisis, and in doing so, combat climate change. And we're doing that with the first 100% carbon emission free and environmental impact mitigating and 100% off-grid and decentralized technology solution that uses only the concentrated power of the sun. Now, depending on whether or not you live in the UK or in fact in the Northern Hemisphere or not, will probably impact how aware and conscious you are about the global water crisis. The World Economic Forum actually named the world water crisis as the #1 issue facing societies in much of the world last year. The water crisis for 2 billion plus people around the world is a daily threat and challenge. There are statistics you can see here which sort of paint that picture well. So global demand for fresh water is likely to exceed supply by 40% by 2030. And in some parts of the Middle East and Northern Africa, that is likely to get as high as 60%. I think for many of us, particularly those of us that live in places like the UK, it's very normal just to get up in the morning and turn the tap on or turn the shower on, or use water for all of our needs through the day. And it's something that we don't necessarily really think about. But when you don't have it, it's a real problem. And two of the real fundamentals in the world are water and energy. So for any socioeconomic development that is required, anything around health and well-being, everything requires water. And climate change is inextricably linked to this problem. It impacts the water crisis, impacting rainfall, snowpack, groundwater availability. Some say as much as 40% by 2050, the way that we are going. It also is impacted by the solution, by the biggest solution to the water crisis at the moment, which is desalination. And current and traditional desalination solutions need a very high level of energy to drive their systems. The majority of this energy is coming from burning fossil fuels, and those fossil fuels globally for the desalination industry are putting out a carbon footprint of about 100 million tons of CO2 per year, and that's due to double in the next century. So our solution at Solar Water is looking to mitigate against that. We've developed a totally new GreenTech energy and water desalination system that you can see here blended into our concentrated solar power desalination plants. These desalination plants are driven by 5th generation concentrated solar power solar concentrators. You can see the system there. And we have a new GreenTech desalination technology that sits within our dome that converts either seawater or brackish water into fresh water or potable water. And these systems are completely decentralized. They're totally off grid and they operate 24/7. So we never have to plug into the grid. And you can see at the bottom the sort of quantities of water that we're able to produce, between 16,000 cubic meters per day all the way up to 140,000 cubic meters per day. So this amount of water can service a very large town, a very large agricultural project, or an industrial complex. And I just wanted to quickly show this map, because obviously we run off solar power, so we run off solar irradiation. So we're dependent on DNI, the DNI being high enough. And you can see here, anywhere that's red or orange around the world is where our solutions are applicable. So I just want to make that point so that everyone's clear that our solutions are not applicable in the UK at the moment. So just a quick snapshot: we're 100% sustainable, carbon emission free. We provide renewable green energy into the system. The system is completely decentralized and self-contained, so it's totally off grid. It can operate 24 hours with the energy storage we have. It can produce 6 to 50 million cubic meters of water per annum. We do have project financing available, and because we're not operating with any fossil fuels, there's less variable costs and pricing. And because of our size, we are quicker to market. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jane, so much for that introduction. Don, would you like to go next?
Excellent, thank you. There we go, and how's that looking? Good?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you very much, Jessica. So Don Scott from PowerRoll. I'll start off with the first chart just to kind of really lay out our ambition. So PowerRoll is a company based up in the Northeast. We have some really innovative tech, which I will share with you, but our primary objective is to fundamentally change the economics of the solar PV industry. If you know solar PV at all, you probably have seen the rooftop panels, commercial domestic dwellings, and out in the fields dotted around the countryside. The current state of that industry is that those modules have been around for a long time, incremental improvement over many, many years. The costs have come down, but also the centralization of manufacturing of that equipment has been concentrated in Asia, mostly in China, and some concerns about how that's going, but also for a lot of applications, a lot of use cases, and a lot of economic situations, particularly in the third world, it's really not a product that's either functionally, from a form perspective, ideal, or still it is quite expensive when you think of the total running costs of silicon. So our ambition is to use our technology to disrupt the economics of the solar industry by creating a very, very low cost product. Here we are a team of about 35 people based up in County Durham in the Northeast. I'm originally from California, but I'm up here in Durham right now. And you can see a group, we've been going for about 5 years since we received our first funding. And we now have a pilot plant running and producing roll-to-roll product, solar film product like you see in the picture there. So
we're
at that. What's that?
Sorry, Don, to interrupt. I don't think it's updating your slides. We seem to still be on an earlier one.
Right. Okay. No, it's not updating, huh?
Yeah, we've got it now.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, just needed to unlock that. So sorry. So we are in the scale up mode in terms of our business development. So we've proven the architecture, we've proven the technology, and we're now in the process of taking what we've done in the lab and re-engineering that for a large high volume scale manufacture. The product solar film, it is unique when compared to particularly silicon panels. I mentioned the cost, talking anywhere from a quarter of the cost to a tenth of the cost, depending on the current PV product you're comparing it to. Extremely lightweight, extremely flexible, extremely cheap to deploy. And one of the really exciting things is it has a very, very light carbon footprint. So it can pay back its integrated manufactured carbon footprint in about 40 days, which is again about a tenth of the amount of time that it would take for a silicon panel to do the same. And in terms of the market opportunities, you know, the state, even with silicon and PV being around for as long as it has, only about 2% of the commercial rooftops in the world today are fitted with PV. So there is a massive opportunity for warehouses, industrial buildings, farm buildings here in the UK and around the world to take these surfaces, which either because of their structure or their shape or the complexity of their ownership, lots of reasons, they have not been able to adopt PV technology and use these currently unproductive spaces to produce green energy. The other market that I'm particularly excited about, as I talk to our partners around the world, is what this could do for the developing nations. And the truth is there's still somewhere between 750 to more than 800 million people around the world who don't have access to reliable electricity. Having access to a low cost, lightweight, easy to deploy product could be transformational for these people and these communities, which is very exciting. I'll stop sharing there and I'll show you just a quick, kind of a visual of what we're working on. So this is a roll of solar film. It's produced using standard roll-to-roll manufacturing processes and off-the-shelf commodity input products, which is how we achieve that disruptively low price point. We're very excited to participate in this webinar. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Carl, would you be able to introduce a little bit about your company?
Yep, I'll do that. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so I won't, there we go. Everyone see that okay?
Yep.
All right, super. So my name's Carl Farron. I'm the founder and CEO of Seraphy Energy. We're a little bit of a different company in the sense of our sort of energy transition. We've taken effectively a lot of lessons learned over 30 plus years more of my industry and experience in oil and gas and applied them to a clean energy space. And our mission really is just to really help organizations meet net zero targets by using baseload geothermal solutions that we've created. So what we've created is a patent bank based around three key areas. One is subsurface, another one is surface, and then the third one is deployability and scalability, which are key areas really around the sort of geothermal space and what's really stopped geothermal really widely scaling around the world for many years, because geothermal is not new. It has been around well over 100 years and probably one of our oldest resources from the point of view of energy use in a renewable space. So what we've developed really is sort of a technology which enables us initially to repurpose existing assets. So we are looking at repurposing oil and gas wells as being a key function in this process, to actually take existing oil and gas assets and actually use the hole in the ground effectively, which has heat in place, and that heat in place can then be converted and extracted to the surface to actually then use the clean energy aspect of that heat to apply to different areas. What that does is removes the need to do lots of drilling or new drilling, and enable us to apply energy very quickly to locations. There's some 20 million wells around the world currently, and each one of them has heat, although some of them may be low grade and not all usable for power generation. Each one of them has potentially access to heat. So what we do is we have developed what we call an advanced closed loop system, which is really based on simple philosophy of ground source heat pumps, but taking on the sort of order of magnitude bigger step of going into kilometers deep and order of magnitude higher temperatures and pressures that we generally encounter in the oil and gas space. And with them higher temperatures, you obviously get higher energy output. So, ground source heat pumps work in, several degrees C and produce, several kilowatts at best. Our system works in hundreds of degrees C and produces megawatts. So it's a order of magnitude different. Some of the other benefits of our system is closed loop. So we don't actually take or move anything from the subsurface. We actually just process heat and move heat from the subsurface to the surface. And we do that using a heat exchanger, which is installed in the well. And that heat exchanger itself allows us to move energy from the subsurface to the surface using what we call working fluids, a bit like the refrigeration system that would be in your fridge, taking outside temperature, cooling inside, etc. We do the reverse of that in effect. And obviously, like I said, we can do this in a way which we can use from existing holes in the ground. It could be oil and gas well, they could be failed geothermal wells, they could be water wells in many cases, which are not used anymore. So any hole in the ground, effectively even mine water, can be used in this same process, and we're looking at these sort of areas. Like I said, the heat exchanger itself is just installed into the existing hole, so there's no need to create any new drilling environment, although the future sort of plans would be to look at scaling up systems. And the idea is, James has indicated on his thing, is really this can be off grid, so you don't need the grid networks, you don't need ancillary systems to make it work. Most oil and gas wells around the world, specifically in developing countries, are in places where they generally don't provide any benefit for the local communities, and they are left in a state which effectively is probably not good for the local community. So to be able to convert them to energy generating centres that provide ideally heat and cooling, but also power at higher temperatures, is a really good benefit. And we're working on lots of different projects at the moment around different countries, specifically Africa and these locations, Latin America, where we are applying these types of studies for developing these projects. Some of the uses can go even from low temperature to agricultural uses. So there's projects we're doing in the UK, for example, which are looking at climatized agriculture through greenhouses. These are, again, taken over existing well sites, which are not being used today for oil and gas exploration, but actually still have wells on the sites, and we're actively now taking them over and repurposing them in conjunction with the operators. And then the medium heat can also be used for industrial processes. So we don't generally talk about heat a lot when we talk about energy, but actually energy usage in the global consumption, over 50% of our energy is consumed for the use of heat. Even in desalination processes, in water treatment and all these, they all use heat processes generally in a lot of these applications. And in an industrial unit, this is a good process. So it gives you a bit of an idea. This is my last slide, but it gives you a little bit of an idea. So what we look at is what we call a cascade approach. So we can look at the variation between low temperature being 30 and higher temperature, sort of 180, to provide a multitude of different offtakes, which can be applied across like low temperature for agriculture, and then even things like large infrastructure, climatization and heating and cooling. We're working with hospitals and government buildings and things like MOD and these types of things at the moment. So that's really just my last slide, and I'll stop there.
Thanks so much, Carl. So each of these companies contributed to our Entering the GreenTech Era white paper, which was an in-depth investigation into the technological advancements that are helping to prevent climate change. And a few of those topics that rose within the paper will be going over today. So one of the things that we did notice was that the UK is a real hub for innovation. There's actually a load of amazing companies based here that are all producing amazing technology. But I think everyone who did agree to that being the case when we did the paper. But what we'd like to talk about is kind of why it is important to have innovation here in the UK. And we'll open it up to our panelists. But if anybody does have any questions or would like to any questions, feel free to use the chat function and question and answers box, and we'll go through those all at the end as well. But yeah, I'll open that up to the floor then. So why is it important that we have such amazing green tech innovation here in the UK?
Well, I don't mind kicking off if that's okay. I've got a few thoughts on this. I mean, the first is in answer to why it's important to have amazing green tech. And I guess everyone's got their own real point of view on where we stand insofar as the impact that we are having to the planet. I'm certainly in the camp that is of the belief that it's looking like a stretch that we are going to hit and stick to the 1.5 degrees centigrade increase target that everyone is looking at. And if you look at the data, it certainly looks at the moment like we're going to be much more like 2.5 degree increase. So there's a lot more work to do, and what we're doing at the moment is not good enough. Everybody needs to play their part, and if we want different outcomes, then we have to do things differently. So that's why it's essential that we have green tech, and frankly that it comes out of the UK is great. I think as far as the UK is concerned, apart from the fact that we are a British company, so the UK is an important base for us, I think when we look at the position that the UK is in at the moment on the world stage post-Brexit, and with the economic issues it's facing, it's incredibly important that the UK is improving its productivity and improving its competitiveness and position on the world stage. And we can do that through innovation. And when you look at different sectors and you look at where the money is focusing in on, then green tech innovation is a great place to be. So follow the money and do the best for putting Britain's best foot forward, I would say.
Excellent. From a personal perspective, I grew up in the Silicon Valley in California back before it was the Silicon Valley. Show you how old I am. But one of the interesting things about when you build that ecosystem, you get companies and people that move between those organizations, and they transfer the skills and the knowledge to create new innovations. And actually, as we were just prepping for this webinar, we were all saying, wow, I could use some solar. And I am really interested in what you're doing with water, Carl and James, and the wells. And we could immediately make little connections intuitively between even the things that we're working on. And I think that spin-off, that Catherine wheel effect, there's a bit of magic. It's not scientific to get it started, but once you do get it started, it will generate new innovation on its own. And I think, as James was saying, this is the economic future for us. It's not just about saving the planet, but these projects will be funded and money will be exchanged, and we want to be good environmental capitalists. And I think the ecosystem around us in stimulating that innovation, it's all self-perpetuating once you get it going. So it's exciting to see how much is happening here in the UK right now.
I think just to add to both James and Don, I think I've always been a climate focused sort of activist, for a better word, even from a young age, and sort of grew up in the country and grew up with nature. Even being in the oil and gas industry for a long while, I've been very conscious about this. And I think the thing is, climate change is the reason we're doing this. We wouldn't have a green tech era We wouldn't have the renewable space. We wouldn't have any of that really if it wasn't the focus and the impact that we're trying to change on the climate front. And there certainly isn't enough being done. We're miles away from achieving the objectives of the Paris Agreement in 2050. We've got a lot more to do. It's everyone's fight, everyone's challenge, and I think everyone sees the innovation and the ability to get behind the innovation with small tech companies as being a way to help in their own way. And I think we've seen that from a startup point of view in the last couple of years, is that self-funded, quite a different approach to raising capital that we've taken, and we've been quite successful on that, and a different model that probably other people would have gone down the route of doing, and we still haven't really gone for a big raise. We're now moving into a Series A, but I think the ability to apply the technology and take lessons learned from what we stand for as a UK business, but also the UK in general. I mean, we have a history of great development and pioneering in shipbuilding and manufacturing, aviation, all sorts of areas like that. And I think the GreenTech area is just an extension of that. We're all transitioning, and I think we also, from our perspective, what we're trying to do is do it in a way where we still have to recognize that we're still going to need fossil fuels, specifically oil and gas, for a long time in certain areas. We have to decarbonize our energy mix and the way we do things, absolutely sure. But we also need to do it in a way that we're not penalizing something else which may cause us a problem in the future. And actually, we do have a lot of products around the world that are reliant on petrochemicals and various other things that do come from oil and gas. So we have to be conscious of that as well. It's not something we can flip a coin and change overnight. It's a process we have to go through. And I think, we sort of stand behind that. And I think by standing behind that, we've also helped a lot of the oil and gas businesses actually identify where they can transition, how they can transition, and how they can find their space in a transition process, which actually is more aligned with where they sit, in the subsurface, that sort of area.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really interesting. And you did bring up sort of funding on that side there. And that was one of the other topics that we did go into on the white paper, investment and adoption, kind of collaboratives. So in the white paper, we asked around like the rate of investment here, and points were raised around the need for maybe diversification in the type of investment, how it needs to be combined with adoption. It can't be a standalone invest in all these companies if that technology isn't going to be adopted on the other side, and how actually it might not yet be significant enough. So do you want to kind of expand on those points?
Happy. Go on.
Okay. I think one of the interesting nuances of the climate challenge is that we have a clock ticking in the future as to the impact of the CO2 and the effects that we're having on the atmosphere. So investment would normally take place at a rather gradual rate as innovation occurs and it gets proven, and then somebody builds on that and that gets proven. In some ways, we don't have time for that. We need to be much more ambitious from an investment perspective. And thankfully, we have some very visionary investors at PowerRoll that are helping us. But I think as UK PLC, we probably could be a bit bolder about recognizing that these companies, we do need to stick our necks out maybe a little bit further on some of these innovations, because we need them now. We can't wait for the incremental improvement over time. So I think that clock ticking on everything that we're doing creates a little bit more pressure that we have to acknowledge and react to.
I think also the innovation space and the UK historically, as far as I'm concerned, has sort of always been quite supportive of UK export of technology and products. And however, I think we are in this space where, as Don said, there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that are uncertain. But what is certain is we're not doing enough. We can do massively amount more, and I mean massively, trillions of more investment into this space. To make an impact change, you have to take risks, and at the end of the day, the more you do of something, the more scalable it becomes, the more less risk is attached to it. So, if we can do more of this investment in larger chunks, we'll actually find ways of actually, making scalable solutions that are exportable, which have a higher return and higher yield in the long run. And I say to everyone, this is not a race to net zero at 2050. No one's going to win it. This is a starting point at 2050, and if we're lucky, we're not even going to get to this. We won't even achieve 1.5 at 2050. So we're not actually racing to try and achieve something. We have to carry on with this after 2050. It has to be a long-term game, and we might not get it right by 2050, but the idea of trying to invest in scalable solutions, I think is where we should be heading, and certainly things which are more sustainable. There's no point in racing down to solve one problem to create another. And I think a lot of the time there's a lot of innovation out there, but trying to solve problems that need solving, but they're solving them with a solution that then creates something else. And I think we need to be more focused on some of the sustainable resolve in this as well.
I think that this sort of crossover between investment, adoption, and straight through the middle of it is risk. And I think for Don and Carl and I, we're probably dealing with this sort of pivot and fulcrum like day in, day out when we're talking to people, either potential customers or potential investors. And I think that there's a lot of greenwashing that goes on around the world and by institutions, and people will be prepared to tick a box in a way if they can get away with it. And I think that when you get to the sharp end of GreenTech, where the three of us live, I think we're the kind of solutions that are really going to hopefully provide really exponential change. And I don't think we're gonna hit those 2050 targets unless we get that exponential change. And so you then get into this conversation with institutions around risk and around adoption. And so it's a chicken and egg situation of, if it's not adopted, then it's not proven enough, then why put the money in? But if you don't put the money in, then you can't get it adopted and you can't get the exponential change. So you sort of live in these cycles, and so many of the sort of bigger investment institutions that you sort of find out in the world haven't yet caught up to this and haven't yet put in place good enough and quick enough, agile enough processes around small, agile, fast to market, higher risk solutions. And so that's needed. And I think access to that and availability of that needs to improve.
No, really good points. And you're saying, obviously, talk about adoption. Do you think that the industries that you work within are becoming a little bit more receptive potentially over the last few years to the idea of implementing GreenTech?
Well, if I could just sort of speak from the oil and gas sort of side, I think there is a massive amount of greenwashing still going on within the oil and gas industry, for sure. I think generally certain companies are making inroads to try and do a transition away from fossil fuels, certainly from the energy perspective, and trying to support the investment into impact changing technology. And I call it impact changing for that reason, because it has to be impact changing for it to make a difference. But there is still a lot of greenwashing, as James said, and there's a lot of companies out there that really are just looking for a tick box exercise. Where we're seeing the real support and the real, should I say, interest from the oil and gas side is, we're stepping into an area which, one, they understand about holes in the ground and wells and stuff like this, so it's easier for them to sort of understand the basis of risk around that. But then you're in another space that's saying, well, if this is so good, why isn't there only 15 gigawatts of geothermal in the world, and why isn't it everywhere, and why isn't it this? And so there's an element of this the sort of child mentality, and not the adult mentality of just getting on and doing it. And I use an example of like somebody wanting tomatoes from a shop. You go into Tesco's, you pick your tomatoes up, you buy them. Very rarely do people look at the price of tomatoes and look between the price of tomatoes between Asda and Tesco's and, you know, every single shop before they go shopping. And unfortunately, the investment world has that mentality today, and it's like, you know, they're looking for where do I put my money, where's the best deal, where's this, where's that, and you know, they're spending too much time looking for the best deal, and actually the worst deal they can have is not doing anything and not putting their money anywhere, because at the end of the day that's going to have a bigger impact. So there's a huge amount of money out there that is looking for a home, and there's so many technologies out there looking to be able to make a change and actually impact change with that money. And I think we're in that sort of space. There's a bit of a should I say a sort of still a transition. People are sitting on a block of always wanting to bet on the best horse, and you know, and when they should be, you know, making sure that they invest in all the technologies that are really going forward, you know.
Yeah, no, really good point. And the next sort of thing that kind of emerged from the white paper was collaboration. So obviously climate change prevention cannot be achieved in one set area or one set technology. It has to be a collaborative approach, whether that's between different companies like yourself, or it's between solution actual industry areas, or it's with, say, the governments. So do you think there has been some more collaboration within the market, or do you think it's strong at the moment, or is there areas that maybe it does need to be worked on?
We I won't go into the technology in depth, but we laugh at we're a bit of a magpie technology. So our solar film is created using very well understood manufacturing processes that are already being deployed, making things like holograms. You know, the inside of your crisp packet, it's coated with a metal using exactly the same process that we use to metallize our solar film. Printing, which is you know, a process that's used in wallpaper, banknotes, a whole bunch of other things. So we're finding it's interesting for us because we're collaborating with very established, mature industries, which it sounds like some of the other panelists are as well, and augmenting what they do to achieve a different objective. And that's quite interesting. And we're taking them on a journey that they hadn't anticipated going on, which is good. We could always use more, though, clearly. And I do think government, as you mentioned that in your question, I think the government could provide a more of a facilitative role in some cases. You know, money is important, but also facilitating and supporting these collaborations between innovators and established companies. Because I have to, when I go to a supplier of vacuum coating technologies, we have to argue for them to give us their time and their energy versus the crisp packet companies. And so I think government could probably do more to help facilitate and kind of lubricate that activity, because we do find ourselves collaborating across industries here at PowerRoll.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I remember what John Kerry said at the end of COP26 when he came out after the deal had been done, and he was talking about how this challenge around climate change was only going to get solved by the collaboration of three groups together. And those three groups were GreenTech innovators, it was private financing, which we've talked about, and then it was governments who were going to put the right environments in place and the right regulations and systems in place for all of this to work together. And I mean, I think there is a very positive progress amongst the collaboration between the three, and we certainly feel it when we're sort of out around the world in the market, and we get very well supported by the Department of International Trade and by our embassies and ambassadors in our key markets in regions around the world. So I think there's absolutely no problem at all insofar as the UK government is concerned, sort of out in the world. Unfortunately, water is not one of the top priority points on the UK's sustainability list, because water is not such an issue here in the UK, but it certainly is out in the world. And I think then when we are trying to have dialogues with governments and ministries in markets around the world, we're finding that so many of them now have green growth strategies built into their socioeconomic plans, whereby socioeconomic development can only come without a cost to the environment. And so carbon emission reduction and other environmental problem mitigations are all necessary. So I think the answer is yes. We're definitely seeing that collaboration, but we got to keep pushing it further.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to that shortly, I think we are seeing some collaboration. I think there can still be a lot more done. I see the DIT being very active overseas. I don't think we have the same level of support in the UK. Actually, on the ground in the UK, of actually helping us get to the point to be able to export and supporting us. I mean, a simple explanation I can explain with that. We're looking at potential of tens of millions of pounds worth of exportable projects. But the real help which you then getting UK Export Finance and other people wanting to support, but the real problem we have is the lower end scaling of the small study that costs 100 grand, or the something like that, which you then have to go and do. So it's the small bits that the UK, when the UK used to be very good at, is like trade missions, supporting with delegations, overseas visits, all these sorts of things. I think a lot of that's gone now, and the fact is, if the startups don't get that front end support of the small bits, it's very then hard to scale and do the big bits. And so I think the bit where we see is the strain is on the traveling, the studies, the stuff like that, which is the 50s, the hundreds of grands here, and doing that bit, which before you get to the £1 million projects. And I think that could be a lot more gelled up, a lot more, should I say, accessible, and a lot more easier to get subsidies through grants, and even if they could be through loan type based aspects, etc. And I think there's a lot more that can be done in that space. Certainly, we haven't really had any success since we started 2 years ago trying to get money out of government for anything local in the UK, which is a shame. And we do get support externally overseas, but in the UK we've had very little, and we've had to effectively bridge the gap ourselves. So it is a bit of a challenge,
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to kind of hear that from your side, because I know there's a lot of things that the government will promote externally, and this is why it was so important when we did develop this white paper, to get that kind of first-hand perspective of how it's being felt on the other side, because from all the legislation and all the sort of outside materials that they're kind of getting out there, they might be promoting it a bit more. But one of the things that you did mention is accessible, and that was kind of a topic that we did raise as well, because the importance of accessibility to green tech, so to truly have that global and considerable impacts that we really do need to have, it needs to be accessible, whatever form that does take. But what do you think there is being done in the green tech market to make these solutions accessible? Or I know, Don, you mentioned earlier around how the way that yours is being developed, it could help third world countries that maybe don't have the kind of instant access to the type of technology we do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that solving the climate crisis for the developed world, we have a key responsibility and an opportunity to do that, but we need to make sure that we bring everybody else along, right? And promote a better, greener, lifestyle healthier and in all ways. And I think we can make a big difference, with our solar product in the UK, but across the industry, because I've been fascinated to learn, the scalability of, James's water treatment solution. This is a concept that we'll speak for you, James, but you can, you have small scale machines, large scale machines. So that the tech that we're creating, I think not in general, but certainly in these cases is a lot more versatile and a lot more scalable, both down and up. And I think that will open up opportunities for micro implementations of green tech that could benefit local communities in ways that hydrocarbons never could, because they were such a industrialized material. It always had to come from a big company. So I think that's almost kind of part of the innovation, is that we're creating technologies that are more accessible. So it's good to see. It's great business too, by the way. Lots of new customers can buy this stuff. So
it's really good. James,
well, maybe I'll like turn the lens back on ourselves and just go back to some of the basics in a way, which is that there's a lot of green tech innovators out there in the world, and some of them are going to make it and some of them are not, and some of the sort of key I guess forks in the road around whether or not that the company does succeed and does become accessible is around whether there's a real market fit and a real market need for it. That's obviously a very key but fundamental basic. And then whether or not the costs and the price equation can get right in order for it to become accessible. And so I think for all of us helping ourselves, but getting added assistance on the continuous innovation and the continuous value engineering that we do within our systems in order to drive the costs down and in order to drive the price down. And I know that we can turn to grants and subsidies and others to try to help with those costs. But I think it's down to us as well to make sure that there's the right level of efficiency in all those things that will allow the accessibility.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well, is I think what we've tried to do is really build a business case that doesn't rely on subsidies or any grants and any sort of build out, because not every country has them, not every country had access to them. And I think if you start on that basis, then from an export value proposition, you are setting yourselves up to fail in some other markets. And I think also, we also got to understand that every country is in a different energy transition, or even, some of them are even not even in an energy transition. They're just trying to get energy and they don't care where they get it from, whether it's a diesel generator or whatever. So I think we have to be conscious of that. And I think, as I think Don and James have mentioned, in certain countries, the statistics of access to water, access to power are devastating in some areas. And I think, to go into somewhere, I had a classic example of somewhere like Nigeria, where, effectively the whole country is running on generators, in many cases. You can't just suddenly go in there and change the energy source to something else, because 40-50% of the economy is reliant on an industry around providing energy from generators. So it is very hard to try and go in and change one aspect of an economy when you've got something else that has an impact. And that's why I was saying earlier on that what we do has to be sustainable, and it's not one glove or one solution fits everything. We have to create a model that actually fits each individual case. And I think that's an important aspect we've learned, and we've learned that through oil and gas as well for many years, that the industry itself is not the same industry we do here in the UK or in the Gulf of Mexico or in Canada as it is in, say, Africa or Malaysia or someone else. So it's a totally different ball game in different areas, and we have to, appreciate that and approach it. And in some games, some areas it's going to be a quicker solution, and then others and other games another area is going to be a longer game. So I think we have to be just conscious of that when we are looking at this energy transition process.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And I think that reminded me of something. There's a lot of debate around, if not all green tech solutions are the ultimate end solution. They're not going to provide us, completely to carbon neutral, and it's not going to happen overnight. And maybe, car batteries is one example where actually the sourcing of the materials to go into the battery is not the most sustainable. But do you think green tech solutions, if they're making progress in one way or another, is still more beneficial than kind of waiting until the ultimate solution arrives, that could do that? But do you think progressions in whatever form that they take is still kind of a good point, I guess?
Well, I personally, I do. I think, moving forward, everything has to be considered, and we might consider things today that tomorrow won't be relevant, and there might be things in the future that we aren't considering today that will be. So that everything is relevant. I think every ton of carbon we can remove in the process obviously has a positive impact, and that basically starts with us as consumers. We have driven a fossil fuel industry globally. As consumers have done that, and companies have responded to a demand for energy and resource, and as they always do, industry and companies demand or respond to people's demand. And for us to actually wind down off that, we've actually ourselves got to get ourselves off the mentality of fossil fuels and this, that, and the other, and the usage and the I want, and I go out and buy, and I need this and I need that, and really look at how do you live a life which is more sustainable. That in itself, in a simple process like that, with everyone doing that, could make a huge impact on the consumption around the world in general. And I think that's the starting point, and I think we have to be conscious of that as people.
Yeah.
I'll give you one other quick analogy from my experience, mostly in IT and enterprise compute, networking, and whatnot. But through the evolution of that industry, there have been loads of innovation, really cool ideas that have been taken to a point, but they don't end up being commercially viable for the intended application. But they'll get picked up by somebody else, or they'll be adapted or moved into a different area, and then they'll be massively successful. Or maybe you need to wait for some enabling technologies to be put into place to trigger an innovation to find its market. Wi-Fi was a great example of that in the enterprise space. It wasn't until the iPhone that everybody wanted Wi-Fi. So you can see places where I think all the innovation, you have to look at it holistically, and you have to think about the long game. And as Carl was saying, it's all incremental and it's all good. We're all working towards a goal which has virtue in it. So yeah, press on, and these things will find their markets, and they'll find their uses, and they'll find their customers, or they won't. But we'll hopefully all get there together in the end.
Mm-hmm. No, brilliant. So yeah, we have one question already. If anyone does want to ask any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But the question that we have is, what is the first step that companies or industries can take if they haven't already, or do they not know where to start in terms of adopting green tech?
Yeah, I think that in a way it's the same rule as with adoption of anything new, is that you have to make a start, and you have to just start trialing, and even if that's on a small scale, and I'm sort of answering this, I think, from a sort of industry perspective or from a customer perspective. And so you have to set up the right sort of facility within your culture and your company structure in order to allow that to happen, and as well as setting up the necessary budgets to allow that to happen. So I think that's from a sort of industry or a customer company point of view, is just start trialing and start learning. And it's the same sort of approach as what Don was just saying. You got to start somewhere, and then just accept that this is going to be a journey that you're going to go on. And then I think the same is kind of true for if you are a green tech innovator yourself, and I think you just need to You just need to make it. You need to make a start. I think it's important, though, that you really understand a need in the market, and that you're really clear on what that need is before you get started. There's no point just innovating for the sake of innovation. You got to know that you're actually answering a customer need.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that to follow on from that is really the key. Really, is the first question is ask why you're doing it. You know, what are you trying to achieve out of doing it? Because everyone's motivations or motives are different, and some of them are genuine, and some of them are, you know, I need to tick a box. Realistically, that's the world we are in the commercial, you know, business world, and some companies are looking to generally, and have started many years ago, you know, before even this became an issue. So I think the first thing is, why do I need to do it? The why question, and then the sort of last one is, you know, what am I needing to achieve out of it, and you know, on what budget? Because, you know, this is an expensive process to do this. If, you know, if you're talking about a large organization, there are tens of millions that you know, potentially needed to do this type of thing. So yeah, I think the process is it has to be an objective driven process. It has to be done in steps, and not just say I want to be green by this date, because you know, invariably that's not going to happen. I think it has to be steps. You know, what looking at the small steps, what can we do today to remove some of our carbon footprint, for example? You know, these are the small questions you have to ask. You know, do we change all our lights for LEDs? Do we, you know, what are the silly little things we can do, small steps we can do ourselves, and then look at the bigger steps in that process. And there's plenty of companies out there that do it for a living, of mapping out types of programs for these types of companies to decarbonize and make steps towards a greener future.
Yeah. No, amazing. So we've only got like a minute left. So I would just like to say thank you so much for all of our attendees for joining us today. If you haven't already, feel free to download our white paper. It's completely free. So it includes, it's quite a chunky piece, a lot of insight in there. We're joined by a range of other collaborators alongside our free guests here today, talking around all the different components that are making up this new green tech era. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Carlton and James. It's been amazing speaking to you as usual. But yeah, hope everyone else has an amazing day. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.